Now that we've learned something about strings, in this last lecture I'd like to write an algorithm that searches for a particular string in the standard input. In other words, I might feed a file like the Voyage of the Beagle to standard input, and I want to search for a particular word in that book, or in that input stream. Okay, this will be a somewhat more complex program than usual, but it's not too hard to understand given what you've learned at this point. So, search.c. Alrighty, we can get rid of this again. Now to do this, I'm going to do something in a fairly easy way, in my opinion. I'm going to use a global variable for my character that I read from the standard input. Now I want a function that reads one character at a time from standard input again, using getChar. If c equals getChar equals end of f, end of file, then exit failure. Okay, so what's going on here? We're going to keep executing, calling this function, and we're going to continue to get characters from the input stream and assign them to C, the global variable C. And again, as I mentioned earlier in one of the lectures, the left-hand side of an assignment statement is the value of that statement. So it also says if C equals end of file, well, we've reached the end of the file, we exit all execution of the program. That's what the exit statement means, and we return a value which is failure. And why is it failure? It's because if we haven't found the pattern that we're looking for by the time that we reach the end of the file, then the pattern's not in there, and we should probably flag it as a failure. Okay. Now let's go to the main function. I'm going to declare some variables I and match, which the purpose for that will become clear soon. It's initialized to 0. And a character string, which I'll initialize to say insects. That'll be the pattern that we'll be looking for in the file. You can of course change that, recompile, and try other strings. First thing is we read a character. Now, what we want to do is start matching what we read against this pattern, insects. So for I equals 0, string I not equal to the end of string, the end of pattern character, I++. We will do the following things. Alright. So we're reading the first character standard input, and now we're starting to go through the pattern. When I say pattern, I'm always referring to this word insects in this particular case. Alright. If the input character is equal to the pattern, okay, very common mistake here often is to use an equal sign instead of an equal sign. We're doing a comparison, not an assignment. Okay. If this is the case, then we say match equals 1. That means that we're currently matching on the pattern and the input string are matching. At that point, we want to print out the character to the screen, standard output, and we want to read the next character. Okay, so what are we doing? If we're starting to match, then we want him to read in the next character and standard input and continue to march down the pattern character by character to see if we continue to still have a match. Okay, but if that fails, if it does not match, but it was matching before, then match has now failed. Something's broken. Character does not match the pattern. and this is something interesting here. We reset the value of I. Now I is the variable in the for loop, which is normally controlled only through this increment operator. We're actually going to change it on the fly. This is dangerous, but if you know what you're doing, it's a fairly elegant way of doing things. What I'm saying is that we no longer have a match. If we no longer have a match, we want to go back to the beginning of the pattern to start looking again and trying to match that against the characters that we're reading in. The reason why I say -1 instead of 0 here is because it will be incremented by this operator. So if the match fails, we reset I to -1, which then will be incremented to 0, and we'll start searching down the pattern again. Finally, if none of those conditions is true, then I is also equal to -1 again. We print out the variable, the character, and we read the next character. Okay, this is, again, if everything has failed and we have no match, then we simply print out the character from the input stream and read in the next character. Okay, I think I've done this correctly. Let's try it. Let's look for insects and Voyage of the Beagle. Alright, it printed out the file up to a certain point, several insects, and I don't even have a carriage return here, so that's why I see the prompt right after that. But it found what I believe is the first instance of insects in this file. Let's try that out and see if that's really true. grep for insects, and grep is a built-in Linux function, which means global regular expression parser, but basically it's a search for insects in voyage.txt, and I will pipe it to more. Hopefully we'll see this. On this islet, yet it is inhabited by several insects. It is inhabited, yes, that's it. So this seems to work quite well, and gives you an example of how we can use strings to do searching in a file. And this is similar to every other search that you've ever done, whether it's with a browser, whether it's a PDF file that you're searching for. They all perform some sort of similar algorithm to match a pattern against the rest of the file. Okay, that concludes this lecture. I hope you've learned an awful lot in these lectures. I will build a second volume of lectures where we deal with more advanced topics in C, where we deal more with pointers, calling, executing code outside of C, structs, file input, file output, lots of good stuff. So long for now.